श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः। हरिः ओम्। गणानां त्वा गणपतिं हवामहे कविं कवीनामुपमश्रवस्तमम् ज्येष्ठराजं ब्रह्मणस्पत शृण्वन्नोतिभिः सीदसादनम् प्रणो देवी सरस्वती वाजेभिर्वाजिनीवती धीनामवित्रयवतु। गणेशाय नमः, सरस्वत्यै नमः, श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः। हरिः ओम्। ॐ नमो भगवते रुद्राय। ॐ नमस्ते रुद्रमन्यवहुतो तैषवे नमः। नमस्ते अस्तु धन्वने बाहुभ्यामुतते नमः। या तैषुः शिवतमा शिवं बभूवते धनुः। शिवा शरव्या या तव तया नो रुद्रमृडया। या ते रुद्रशिवा तनूरघोरा पापकाशिनी। तया नस्तनुवाशन्तमया गिरिशन्तापि चाकशीः। यामिषुं गिरिशन्तहस्ते बिभर्षस्तवे। शिवां गिरित्रतां कुरु मारिगुंसि पुरुषं जगत्। शिवेन वचसा त्वा गिरिशाच्चावदामसि। यथा नः सर्वमित्यगतयक्ष्मगुं सुमना असत्। अध्यवोचदधिभक्ता प्रथमो दैव्योऽभिषक्। अहीगुश्च सर्वान् जम्भयन् सर्वाश्च यातु धान्यः। असौ यस्ताम्रो अरुणौ तव बभ्रुः मङ्गलः। ये चेमागुं रुद्रा अवितो दिक्षु श्रिता सहस्रशो वैशागुं हेरयीमहे। असौ यो वसर्पति नीलग्रीवो विलोहितः। उतैनं गोपा अदृशन्नदृशन्नदहार्यः। उतैनं विश्वा भूतानि सदृष्टो मृडयातिनः। नमो अस्तु नीलग्रीवाय सहस्राक्षाय मीढुषे। अतो ये अस्य सत्त्वानो हन्तेभ्यो करन्नमः। प्रमुञ्च धन्वनस्त्वमुभयोराग्नियोर्जाम्। याश्च ते हस्तैषवः पराता भगवो वपा। अवतत्यदनुस्त्वगुं सहस्राक्षशतेषु धे। निशील्य शल्यानां मुखा शिवो नः सुमना भव। विद्यं धनुः कपर्दिनो विशल्यो बाणवागुम्भुत। अनेशन्नस्येषव आभुरस्य निषङ्गतिः। या ते हेतिर्मीडुष्टमहस्ते बभूवते धनुः। तयास्मान् विश्वतस्त्वमयक्ष्मया परिभुजा। नमस्ते अस्मायुधाय नातताय धृष्णवे। उभाभ्यामुदते नमो बाहुभ्यां तव धन्वने। परिते धन्वनो हेतिरस्मान् वृणक्तु विश्वतः। अतो हि शुदिस्तवारे अस्मन्निदेहितम्। नमस्ते अस्तु भगवन् विश्वेश्वराय महादेवाय त्र्यम्बकाय त्रिपुरान्तकाय त्रिकाग्निकालाय कालाग्निरुद्राय नीलकण्ठाय मृत्युञ्जयाय सर्वेश्वराय सदाशिवाय श्रीमन्महादेवाय नमः। नमो हिरण्यवाहवे सेनान्ये दिशां च पतये। नमो नमो वृक्षेभ्यो हरिकेशेभ्यः पशूनां पतये। नमो नमः सस्पिञ्जराय द्विषीमते पतीनां पतये। नमो नमो बब्लुषाय विव्याधिनेन्द्राणां पतये। नमो नमो हरिकेशायोपवीतिने पुष्टानां पतये। पतये नमो नमो भवस्य हेत्यै जगतां पतये नमो नमो रुद्राय तथाविने क्षेत्राणां पतये नमो नमः सूताय हन्त्याय वनानां पतये नमो नमो रोहिताय स्तपतये वृक्षाणां पतये नमो नमो मन्त्रिणे वाणिजाय कक्षाणां पतये नमो नमो भुवन्तये वारिवस्कृताय औषधीनां पतये नमो नमः उच्चैर्घोषाय क्रन्दयते पत्नीनां पतये नमो नमः कृष्णवीताय धावते सत्त्वनां पतये नमः नमः सहमानाय निर्व्याधिन आव्याधिनीनां पतये नमो नमः ककुभाय निषङ्गिणे स्तेनानां पतये नमो नमो निषङ्गिन इषुधिमते तस्कराणां पतये नमो नमो वञ्चते परिवञ्चते स्थायूनां पतये नमो नमो निषेरवे परिचरायारण्यानां पतये नमो नमः सृगाविभ्यो जिगागुंसभ्यो मुष्णतां पतये नमो नमो श्रीमद्भ्यो नक्तं चरभ्यः प्रकृन्तानां पतये नमो नमः उष्णीषिणे गिरिचराय कुलुञ्चानां पतये नमो नमः इषुमद्भ्यो दन्वाविभ्यश्च वो नमो नमः आतन्वानेभ्यः प्रतिदधानेभ्यश्च वो नमो नमः आयच्छद्भ्यो विसृजद्भ्यश्च वो नमो नमो स्यद्भ्यो विद्यद्भ्यश्च वो नमो नमः आसीनेभ्यश्च यानेभ्यश्च वो नमो नमः स्वपद्भ्यो जाग्रद्भ्यश्च वो नमो नमः शिष्टभ्यो धावद्भ्यश्च वो नमो नमः सभाभ्यः सभापतिभ्यश्च वो नमो नमो अश्वेभ्योऽश्वपतिभ्यश्च वो नमः नमः आव्याधिनीभ्यो विविद्यन्तीभ्यश्च वो नमो नमः उगणाभ्यस्त्रिगुंहतीभ्यश्च वो नमो नमो घृत्सेभ्यो घृत्सपतिभ्यश्च वो नमो नमो प्रातेभ्यो प्रातपतिभ्यश्च वो नमो नमो गणेभ्यो गणपतिभ्यश्च वो नमो नमो विरूपेभ्यो विश्वरूपेभ्यश्च वो नमो नमो महद्भ्यः क्षुल्लकेभ्यश्च वो नमो नमो रतिभ्यो रथेभ्यश्च वो नमो नमो रथेभ्यो रथपतिभ्यश्च वो नमो नमः सेनाभ्यः सेनानिभ्यश्च वो नमो नमः शत्रुभ्यः सङ्ग्रहीतृभ्यश्च वो नमो नमः सक्षभ्यो रथकारेभ्यश्च वो नमो नमः कुलालेभ्यः कर्मारेभ्यश्च वो नमो नमः पुञ्जिष्टेभ्यो निषादेभ्यश्च वो नमो नमः इषुकृभ्यो धन्वकृभ्यश्च वो नमो नमो मृगयुभ्यश्वनिभ्यश्च वो नमो नमः स्वभ्यश्वपतिभ्यश्च वो नमः नमो भवाय च रुद्राय च नमः शर्वाय च पशुपतये च नमो नीलग्रीवाय च शितिकण्ठाय च नमः कपर्दिने च व्युक्तकेशाय च नमः सहस्राक्षाय च शतधन्वने च नमो गिरिशाय च शिपिभिष्टाय च नमो नीडुष्टमाय चेषुमते च नमो ह्रस्वाय च वामनाय च नमो बृहते च वर्षीयसे च नमो वृद्धाय च संवृद्वने च नमो अग्र्याय च प्रथमाय च नमः आशवे चाजिराय च नमः शीघ्रियाय च शीभ्याय च नमः ऊर्ण्याय च वस्वन्याय च नमः स्रोतस्याय च दीप्याय च नमो ज्येष्ठाय च कनिष्ठाय ज्येष्ठाय च नमः पूर्वजाय च परजाय च नमो मध्यमाय च पगल्भाय च नमो जगन्याय च बुद्धियाय च नमः सोऽप्याय च प्रतिसर्याय च नमो याम्याय च क्षेम्याय च नमः पूर्वर्याय च कल्याय च नमः श्लोक्याय चावसान्याय च नमो वन्याय च कक्ष्याय च नमः श्रवाय च प्रतिश्रवाय च नमः आशुषेणाय चाशुरजाय च नमः शूराय चावविन्दते च नमो वर्मिणे च वरूदिने च नमो बिल्विने च कवचिने च नमः श्रुताय च श्रुतसेनाय च नमो दुन्दुभ्याय च हनन्याय च नमो कृष्णवे च प्रमुषाय च नमो दूताय च प्रहिताय च नमो निषङ्गिणे चेषुधिमते च नमः तीक्ष्णेशवे चायुधिने च नमः स्वायुधाय च सुधन्वने च नमः श्रुत्याय च पत्याय च नमः काट्याय च नीप्याय च नमः सूर्याय च सरस्याय च नमो नाद्याय च वैशन्ताय च नमः कूप्याय च भट्याय च नमो वर्ष्याय च वर्ष्याय च नमो मेघ्याय च विद्युत्याय च नमः ईन्द्रियाय च तप्याय च नमो वाक्याय च रेश्म्याय च नमो वास्तव्याय च वास्तुपाय च ॐ हर 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 ॐ नमः सोमाय च रुद्राय च नमः साम्राय चारुणाय च नमः शङ्खाय च पशुपतये च नमः उग्राय च भीमाय च नमो अग्रे वधाय च दूरे वधाय च नमो अन्त्रे च हनीयसे च नमो वृक्षेभ्यो हरिकेशेभ्यो नमस्काराय नमः शम्भवे च मयोभवे च नमः शङ्कराय च मयस्कराय च नमः शिवाय च शिवतराय च नमः तीर्थ्याय च कूल्याय च नमः पार्याय च वार्याय च नमः प्रकरणाय चोत्तरणाय च नमः आतार्याय च लाढ्याय च नमः षष्ट्याय च फेन्याय च नमः सिकत्याय च प्रवाह्याय च नमः हिरण्याय च प्रपत्याय च नमः किगुंशिलाय च क्षयनाय च नमः कपर्धिने च पुलस्तये च नमो गोष्ठ्याय च गृह्याय च नमः स्तल्भ्याय च गेह्याय च नमः काट्याय च गह्वरेष्ठाय च नमो हृदयाय च निवेष्ट्याय च नमः पागुंसव्याय च रजस्याय च नमः शुष्याय च हरित्याय च नमो लोप्याय चोलप्याय च नमः ऊर्व्याय च सूर्याय च नमः पर्ण्याय च पर्णशध्याय च नमो पगुरमाणाय चाभिघ्नते च नमः आखिरते च प्रखिरते च नमो वक्किरिकेभ्यो देवानागं हृदयेभ्यो नमो विक्षीणकेभ्यो नमो विचिन्वक्केभ्यो नमः आनिर्हतेभ्यो नमः आमीवक्केभ्यः द्रावे अन्धसस्पते दरिद्रं नीललोहिता येषां पुरुषाणामेषां पशूनां माहेर्मा रोमो येषां किञ्चनाममत् या ते रुद्रशिवा तनुशिवा विश्वाह भेषजी शिवा रुद्रस्य भेषजी तया नो मृडजीवसे इमागं रुद्राय तवसे कपर्दिने शयद्वीराय प्रभरामहे मतिम् यथा नः शमसद्विपदे चतुष्पदे विश्वं पुष्टं ग्रामे अस्मिन्ननातुरम् मृडानो रुद्रो तनो मयस्कृदिक्षयद्वीराय नमसा विधेमते यच्चञ्चयोश्चमनुराय जे पिता तदश्याम तव रुद्रः प्रणीतौ मानो महान्तमुतमानो अर्भकं मानमुक्षन्तमुतमानमुक्षितम् मानो वदीप्रिकरं मोदमातरं प्रियामानस्तनुवो रुद्ररीरिषः मानस्तोकेतनये मान आयुषि मानो गोषु मानो अश्वेषु रीरिषः वीरान् मानो रुद्रभामितो वदीर्हविष्मन्तो नमसा विधेमते आराते गोग्न उत पूरुषग्ने क्षयद्वीराय सुन्नमस्मे ते अस्तु रक्षाचनो अधिक देव ब्रूह्य राजनः शर्म यच्चद्विवर्हाः सुहिश्रुतं दत्तसदयुवानं मृगण्ण भीममुपहत्नुमुग्रम् चरित्रे रुद्रस्तवानो अन्यन्ते अस्मन्निवपन्तु सेनाः परिणो रुद्रस्य हेतिर्वृणत्तु परित्वेषस्य दुर्मतिरगायोः अवस्तिरामगवस्यस्तनुष्वमीड्वस्तोकाय तनयाय मृडया मीडुष्टम शिवतम शिवो नः सुमना भव परमे वृक्ष आयुधन्निधाय कृत्तिं वसान आचर पिनाकं बिभ्रदागहि विगिरिदविलोहित नमस्ते अस्तु भगवः यास्ते सहस्रगुं हेतयोऽन्यमस्मन्निवपन्तु ताः सहस्राणि सहस्रदा बाहुवोस्तव हेतयः तासामीशानो भगवः पराचीनामुखाकृति सहस्राणि सहस्रशो ये रुद्रा अधिभूम्याः तेषागुं सहस्रयोजने वधन्वानि तन्मसि अस्मिन् महत्यर्णवेऽन्तरिक्षे भवा अधि नीलग्रीवाशितिकण्ठाः शर्वा अधः शचाचराः नीलग्रीवाशितिकण्ठादिवगुं रुद्रा उपश्रिताः ये वृक्षेषु सस्मिञ्जरा नीलग्रीवा विलोहिताः ये भूतानामधिपतयो विशिखासक्तपर्धिनः ये अन्येषु विविद्यन्ति पात्रेषु पिबतो जनान् ये पतां पतिरक्षय ऐलभृदायव्युदः ये तीर्थानि प्रचरन्ति श्रुतावन्तो निषङ्गिनः य एतावन्तश्च भूयागुंसश्च दिशो रुद्रावितस्थिरे तेषागुं सहस्रयोजने वधन्वानि तन्मसि नमो रुद्रेभ्यो ये पृथिव्यां येऽन्तरिक्षे ये दिवि येषामन्नं वातो वर्षमिषवस्तेभ्यो दश प्राचीर्दश दक्षिणा दश प्रतीचीर्दशोदीचीर्दशोद्वास्तेभ्यो नमस्ते नो मृडयन्तु तेयं विष्मो यश्च नोद्वेष्टितं भोजं वेदधामि त्र्यम्बकं यजामहे सुगन्धिं पुष्टिवर्धनम् उर्वारुकमिव बन्धनान् मृत्योर्मुक्षीयमामृतात् यो रुद्रो अग्नौ यो अप्सु ओषधीषु यो रुद्रो विश्वा भुवनानि वेश तस्मै रुद्राय नमो अस्तु ये ते सहस्रमयुतं पाशा मृत्यो मर्त्याय हन्तवे तान् यज्ञस्य मायया सर्वानवयजामहे मृत्यवे स्वाहा मृत्यवे स्वाहा प्राणानां ग्रन्थिरसि रुद्रो मा विशान्तकः तेनान्येनाप्यायस्व नमो रुद्राय विष्णवे मृत्युर्मे पाहि तमुष्टु हि यस्विषुः सुधन्वायो विश्वस्य क्षयति भेषजस्य यक्ष्वा महेशौ मनस नमो विविदेवमसुरं दुवस्य अयं मे हस्तो भगवान् अयं मे भगवत्तरः अयं मे विश्वभेषजो यगुं शिवाभिमर्शनः ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः यदक्षरपदभ्रष्टं मात्राहीनं तु यद्भवेत् तत्सर्वं क्षम्यतां देव नारायण नमोऽस्तु ते विसर्गबिन्दुमात्राणि पदपादाक्षराणि च न्यूनानि चातिरिक्तानि क्षमस्व साईश्वर अपराधसहस्राणि क्रियन्ते हर्निशं मया दासोऽयमिति मां मत्वा क्षमस्व साईश्वर अन्यथा शरणं नास्ति त्वमेव शरणं मम तस्मात् कारुण्यभावेन रक्ष रक्ष साईश्वर हरिः ओं तत्सत् श्री साईश्वरार्पणमस्तु।
घनश्याम सुंदर श्याम मनोहर श्याम घनश्याम मेघ श्याम राधे श्याम कन्हैया हे गिरिधारी श्याम कन्हैया हे गिरिधारी वनमाली बंसीधारी कृष्ण मुरारी घनश्याम वनमाली बंसीधारी कृष्ण मुरारी घनश्याम मीरा के प्रभु गिरिधर श्यामा मीरा के प्रभु गिरिधर श्यामा श्याम घनश्याम मेघ श्याम राधे श्याम घनश्याम सुंदर श्याम मनोहर के अवतारा साई रामा साई कृष्ण साई बाबा युग के अवतारा
अति सुन्दर श्रीराम मोहन रघुरामा अति सुन्दर श्रीरामा मारुति सेवित रामा मारुति सेवित रामा श्री राम राम रघुरामा श्री राम राम रघुरामा श्री राम राम रघुरामा श्री राम राम रघुरामा श्री राम राम साई श्री राम राम साई मोहन रघुरामा अति सुन्दर श्रीरामा मारुति सेवित रामा श्री राम राम रघुरामा श्री राम राम रघुरामा श्री राम राम साई श्री राम राम साई रघुरामा अति सुन्दर श्रीरामा Love is my hope, truth is my breath, this is my food. Love is my hope, truth is my breath, this is my food. Love is my hope, truth is my breath, this is my food. Love is my form, truth is my bread, bliss is my food. My life is my message, expansion is my life. No reason for love, no season for love, no birth, no death. Prema satya ananda, dharma shanti ahimsa. Shirdi Sai, Satya Sai, Prema Sai, Jai Jai. Shirdi Baba, Satya Baba, Prema Baba, Jai Jai. Love is my form, truth is my breath, bliss is my food.
राम कृष्ण हरि नारायण राम कृष्ण हरि नारायण दीन जनाबन हरि नारायण दीन जनाबन हरि नारायण दीन शरण्य नारायण दीन शरण्य नारायण बाबा भय हरना साई नारायण बाबा भय हरना साई नारायण राम कृष्ण हरि नारायण दीन जनाबन हरि नारायण दीन शरण्य नारायण बाबा भय हरना साई नारायण बाबा भय हरना साई नारायण राम कृष्ण हरि नारायण
जय राम
अयोध्यावासी राम 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 दशरथ नंदन 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 राम
पतित पावन जानकी जीवन सीता मोहन पतित पावन जानकी जीवन सीता मोहन अयोध्यावासी राम 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 दशरथ नंदन राम
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 पतित पावन जानकी जीवन सीता मोहन
पतित पावन जानकी जीवन सीता मोहन
पतित पावन जानकी जीवन सीता मोहन अयोध्यावासी राम 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 दशरथ नंदन पतित पावन जानकी जीवन सीता मोहन अयोध्यावासी राम 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 दशरथ नंदन पतित पावन जानकी जीवन सीता मोहन सीता मोहन जानकी जीवन पतित पावन जानकी जीवन सीता मोहन पतित पावन जानकी जीवन सीता मोहन अयोध्यावासी राम 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 दशरथ नंदन रामचंद्र रघुवीरा रामचंद्र रणधीरा रामचंद्र रघुवीरा रामचंद्र रणधीरा रामचंद्र रघुनाथ रामचंद्र रामचन्द्र मम बन्धो रामचन्द्र दय सिन्धो रामचन्द्र मम बन्धो रामचन्द्र दय सिन्धो रामचन्द्र रघुवीरा रामचन्द्र रणधीरा रामचन्द्र रघुनाथ रामचन्द्र जगन्नाथ रामचन्द्र मम बन्धो रामचन्द्र दय सिन्धो रघुवीरा रणधीरा रघुनाथ जगन्नाथ रघुरामा परधामा मम बन्धो दय सिन्धो रघुवीरा रणधीरा रघुनाथ जगन्नाथ मम बन्धो दय सिन्धो मम बन्धो दय सिन्धो रामचन्द्र रघुवीरा रामचन्द्र रणधीरा
राधा परिणय राधे गोविंदा
राधा परिणय राधे गोविंदा
राधा परिणय राधे गोविंदा
परिणय राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा राधे श्याम
गोविंदा राधे श्याम
वो राधे गोविंदा राधे श्याम
गोविंदा राधे श्याम
हे राधे 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 श्याम 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 राधे श्याम 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 राधे श्याम वो राधे गोविंदा राधे श्याम वो राधे गोविंदा राधे श्याम राधा परिणय राधे गोविंदा राधा परिणय राधे गोविंदा वो राधे गोविंदा राधे श्याम हे राधे 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 श्याम 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 राधे श्याम वो राधे गोविंदा राधे श्याम वो राधे गोविंदा राधे श्याम राधे गोविंदा राधे 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 गोविंदा राधे राधे हे राधे गोविंदा राधे 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 गोविंदा राधे राधे हे राधे गोविंदा राधे 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 गोविंदा राधे 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 गोविंदा राधे राधे वो राधे 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 राधे
दशरथनन्दन राम कौसल्यासुतवर्धन राम विश्वामित्र प्रियधन राम चन्द्रकिरण कुलमण्डल राम श्रीमान दशरथ नन्दन राम कौसल्यासुतवर्धन राम विश्वामित्र प्रियधन राम चन्द्रकिरण कुलमण्डल राम
Multi-faith prayers requesting all devotees to join in. The Sikh prayer. एक ओंकार सतनाम करता पुरख निर्भव निर्वैर अकाल मूरत अजूनी सेभं गुर प्रसाद जप आद सच जुगाद सच है भी सच नानक होसी भी सच. सुखिनो भवन्तु समस्तलोका सुखिनो भवन्तु समस्तलोका सुखिनो
जय बोलो भगवान श्री सत्य साई बाबा जी की
पवित्रं बाबा विभूतिं परमं विचित्रं विभूतिं परमं पवित्रं बाबा विभूतिं परमं विचित्रं लीला विभूतिं परमार्थनिष्ठात् मोक्षप्रदानं परमार्थनिष्ठात् मोक्षप्रदानं बाबा विभूतिं निगमाश्रयामि बाबा विभूतिं निगमाश्रयामि
Holy and supreme is Baba's vibhuti.
Going forth His streams, His way of vibhuti.
So spacious is His mind, His vast liberation. Baba's vibhuti is our protection. Paramam pavitram Baba vibhuti. Paramam vichitram Leela vibhuti.
I offer my humble pranams at the lotus feet of our dearest Swami, respected elders, brothers and sisters, Jai Sai Ram. I would like to invite Sai Gayatri to read the quote.
Sai Ram, respected elders, brothers and sisters, Jai Sai Ram. The quote for the week is, "Why fear when I am here? Put all your faith in me. I shall guide you and guard you. Baba, Jai Sai Ram."
Thank you, Sai Gayatri. Can I now please ask Arani to read the thought for the week?
I offer my most humble pranams at the lotus feet of our dearest Swami, respected elders, brothers and sisters, Jai Sai Ram. Thought for the week: Atman Jnana can be obtained only by faith. Develop faith in yourself and faith in God. Today, self-confidence is manifest only in matters relating to worldly achievements and self-centered pursuits. Faith and confidence are not in evidence in the spiritual field. Without unwavering faith, the divine cannot be experienced. Because of the absence of firm faith, the formal observance of spiritual practices yields no results. The primary requisite is unqualified and unshakable faith in God. One-pointed devotion promotes spiritual earnestness. The earnest seeker gets knowledge of the self. The earnest devotee needs no other qualification except deep faith. He needs no other knowledge, no title to lineage or wealth. He may belong to any caste or community. He may be a child or even an animal like Gajendra. Valmiki, Nanda, Kuchela, Dhruva, Gajendra, Sabari, Vidura, and Hanuman are examples of devotees who got God's grace through their deep devotion without any special qualification. Baba, Jai Sai Ram.
Moving on to today's announcements. 97th birthday sadhana. As part of our sadhana for Swami's birthday, we are doing the sadhana of writing the name Om Shri Sai Ram every day for 97 days, leading up to Swami's 97th birthday. This is a simple yet powerful way of dedicating time to chant the Lord's name. We will collect the completed books on Swami's birthday on the 23rd of November and arrange to send them over to Puttaparthi for offering at Swami's Divine Sannidhi. For those who need more time, we will collect the second lot during our Christmas celebrations. If any of you need a book, then please contact the spiritual coordinator. National Birthday Celebrations. The National Birthday Celebrations will be taking place next Saturday, the 5th of November at the Bushi Arena from 10 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Dr. Shashank Shah will be the guest speaker, and all are welcome to attend. Please register on the national website as shown on the screen. Homeless Shelter Service Project. Since July 2021, Mill Hill Sai Centre have been providing home-cooked dinners to the homeless guests at Hackney Night Shelter on the third Sunday of each month. We are looking for more volunteers who would be willing to make home-cooked dinners for around 10 to 12 guests. If you're not able to drop it off at the shelter, then we can try to arrange someone to drop it off for you if it's brought to the centre on the Sunday morning. If you are interested in this service activity, please contact Surbi Aunty or Shankavi. The next service will be on the 20th of November. Winter clothing. As we enter the colder months of the year, Mill Hill youth are embarking on a service project to collect new or used winter clothing to donate to the homeless members of our society. We need your support to donate coats, caps, gloves, and scarves that are clean and in good condition for this server to be donated in November and December. Please bring these items to the centre for the next Sunday onwards, and Vidya and Arun will be able to collect them. Upcoming events and festivals. The regional Akhanda bhajans will be from 6 p.m. on Saturday the 12th of November to 6 p.m. on the Sunday 13th of November at the Central London Sai Centre in Russell Square. Mill Hill slot is from 10 p.m. to midnight on Saturday. Mill Hill Sai Centre will be having our own centre bhajans from 6 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. on Sunday the 13th of November. Ladies' Day will be celebrated on Sunday the 20th of November from 9 a.m. And Swami's birthday will be celebrated on 2 days, the morning of the 23rd of November and Sunday the 27th of November. Health awareness sessions. Immediately after this morning's program, we will be having 2 doctors from our centre presenting to us on some common health conditions in order to raise awareness and encourage healthy lifestyles. In today's session, we'll be covering the following: blood pressure, cholesterol, diabetes, and nutrition. There are 2 parts to this session. The first part will be a 15 to 20-minute presentation with time for a few questions, if any. Next, our doctors will be available to check your blood pressure and blood sugar and answer any of your questions. I now invite Dr. Shankavi and Dr. Sindhu to come up for the presentation. Thank you. Sai Ram.
Sairam, everyone. Thank you so much for those of you who are staying for this health awareness session. The reason why we decided to do this was just to bring some awareness. It's not to cause any anxiety or anything like that. So I hope the GPs are not going to be busy with phone calls tomorrow to book appointments. But yeah, it's just to bring awareness on some of the common conditions that most of us we will probably face, and that's things like high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, and nutrition as well. And then we also have an opportunity to test your blood pressure and your blood sugar levels after this talk. So I'll start off with Sindhu, who will talk about high blood pressure.
Sairam, everyone. It's a bit loud. My name is Sindhu. I recently joined the centre here during COVID, and my children come for Bala because, and I'm currently a GP working a few sessions a week. So we just wanted to talk about a few topics, just bring about some awareness, and hopefully, get you more aware of your health and make some changes in life, hopefully. So I will start with blood pressure. So why does blood pressure matter? High blood pressure affects more than 1 in 4 adults in England. So that's probably a quarter of us will probably face problems with our blood pressure in our lifetime. It's the second biggest risk factor for early death. High blood pressure, as we know, can be controlled by many lifestyle changes, and it currently accounts for more than about 12% of all visits to GPs in England. People from most deprived areas are 30% more likely to face problems with blood pressure than the others. High blood pressure, as we know it, is a condition that we call hypertension in the medical world. Having high blood pressure puts a strain on your heart and can lead to problems with your blood vessels becoming damaged over time, and then therefore causes a problem with heart disease. I normally describe it to my patients as plumbing in your housework, and you often have water running through the pipes, and often if you have low pressure in your pipes, you find that the tap's not running too well. You might feel in your body lightheaded, a bit dizzy. You're often aware of it. But if the pressure's high, often you don't realise it's a bit of a silent killer until something happens, a pipe bursts, and it causes problems. So it's often better to catch it early than leave it too late. So having high blood pressure doesn't all just cause sort of heart problems, but it can cause problems with strokes, problems with your vessels in your legs, kidneys, and also your brain, causing dementia in the long run. So how we measure it, you probably know that we use a blood pressure machine, a cuff, put on the upper arm and get 2 readings. So often it gives you a higher reading, the systolic blood pressure, which is the force at which the heart pumps the blood around your body. The diastolic pressure, so the lower number of the 2, is the resistance to the blood flow in the vessels. And they're both measured in millimeters per mercury. So what we normally consider high blood pressure is anything over 140 over 90. And the ideal target is to try and get it between sort of 90 over 60 and 120 over 80. But anything up until sort of 140, 90 is usually acceptable. And anything under 90 over 60, often you find that it's a bit too low and you might start having symptoms of lightheadedness or dizziness. So there are various risk factors for higher blood pressure, and these can all increase your risk. And these are things that we can change in our lifestyle. So things like smoking, a poor diet, increased alcohol intake, and as well as lack of physical activity, so exercise. And other factors that also contribute to the risk of these will also, they will cause obesity, so increased weight gain, problems with diabetes and sugar control, high cholesterol. All together, we worry about heart problems with these things. So obviously, these are risk factors that we can modify, that we can change. There are obviously unmodifiable risk factors, things like our genetics, so what our parents may have, grandparents may have, we can't change, our gender, our age, our ethnicity. Whereas these other things listed here, such as smoking, being overweight or obese, increased alcohol intake, and the lack of exercise, are all things that we can work on over time to try and reduce the risks in our long term. So one of the important factors in blood pressure is salt, so sodium. And we know that obviously high intakes of sodium and salt can cause high blood pressure. We generally find that sodium intake in the UK is probably slightly higher than the average population. And there's about 1 gram of sodium in about 2.5 grams of salt. It is recommended that the usual allowance per day for an adult is 6 grams, and we find that children under 11 should really eat less than that. But currently the intake in the UK seems to be 8 grams per day. So sodium is a component of common salt, known as sodium chloride, as we know, and most raw foods tend to contain small amounts of this. Often salt is added during sort of processing food and things like that, and I'm sure Priya, our nutritionist, will go into this a bit more later. And it's recommended to try and choose foods, obviously, with lower salt content by checking the labels and trying not to add extra salt when cooking, but trying to maybe think of alternatives like spices and herbs to try and add flavour to your foods. So in summary, we obviously know blood pressure is an important risk factor that contributes to sort of heart disease. Our target aim is to try and get it under 140/90, and obviously there are changes that you can make to your lifestyle to try and improve this. Thank you.
I'll talk to you a little bit about high cholesterol. So what is cholesterol? So cholesterol is a fat chemical that we have in our body, and it gets a lot of bad press because once we hear the word cholesterol, everyone's blood pressure goes up. But actually, we do need cholesterol in our body. It does a lot of things. So we do need cholesterol, but it depends on what type of cholesterol. So cholesterol, it's carried around in the blood in something called lipoproteins. So the type of cholesterol matters because you have two types of lipoproteins. You have something called HDLs, or high-density lipoproteins, which is the good cholesterol. And you also have low-density lipoproteins, which is the bad cholesterol. So as you can see in that diagram over there, HDL is happy, so it's a good cholesterol. And the reason why it's good is because it keeps your arteries, it keeps your blood vessels nice and clean without any sort of fat deposits that can block and clog up the arteries. But your LDLs, the bad cholesterols or the lethal cholesterols, they can clog up your arteries and they can clog up your blood vessels, which means that there's less blood that's flowing to important areas like your heart or your legs or your brain. And so why does this actually matter? It's because high levels of low-density lipoproteins, so your bad cholesterol, can increase your risk of cardiovascular disease. So that's things like strokes and heart attacks and peripheral arterial disease, so less blood flow to your legs. And the UK, we're quite bad with this. We have a really, really high levels of the bad cholesterol compared to other countries. So there's definitely room for improvement. If we move on to the next slide. So what are the risk factors? There's some things that we can definitely change, so that's within our lifestyles. Things like exercise, so poor diet, fatty foods, all of the foods that we like eating are usually unhealthy. And a lack of exercise as well, obesity. These things are going to increase your risk of high cholesterol. There are some things that are treatable, so if you have a medical condition like high blood pressure or diabetes or kidney disease, that will also increase your risk of high cholesterol. And there are things that we just can't help, and that's things like a strong family history, blame your ancestors, or being male, unfortunately, or age. As we get older, it does increase our risk. An ethnic group as well, so I can see the majority of us here come from an Asian background, and that also increases our risk. What are the signs and the symptoms? So actually with cholesterol, we don't really have symptoms as such. It's usually, the symptoms that you get is usually as a result of high cholesterol, so things like chest pain or pain in your legs, things like that, which is a result of high cholesterol causing something else, like angina or peripheral arterial disease. But one of the things that you can look out for is yellow deposits around the eye, and that's usually a sign of high cholesterol. So we diagnose it usually based on your risk factors and a blood test. So how can you get tested? So if anyone's worried about high cholesterol, or if anyone has got high cholesterol, you'd know that your GP would have organised a blood test for you. And in that, we would look at the types of cholesterol. So it's split into different types, as you can see in that table. And then they would work out whether you've got high cholesterol or whether you're at risk of any cardiovascular diseases. What's your 10-year risk of getting a stroke or a heart attack? And if that risk is high, then they might start you on something, or they'll give you some lifestyle advice. So how can we lower our cholesterol? Eat less fatty food. It's easier said than done, but yeah, that will definitely reduce our risk of high cholesterol. Also exercising. We should really be exercising 2.5 hours a week, which is, for some people, is a big ask, but it really does, trying to get into those habits of eating healthy, exercising regularly, it does really help with reducing those risks of strokes and heart attacks. And what medicines can we use to lower cholesterol? So some of you might be on something called a statin, so something like atorvastatin or simvastatin. And those, essentially, they reduce the amount of cholesterol that your body makes. And that's how they reduce your cholesterol levels. So this is just a whistle-stop tour on cholesterol. And I'll pass it on to the next topic's on diabetes.
So Sai Ram, everybody. My name is Pooja, and I'm a consultant hepatologist, and I've been asked to talk to you about diabetes today. And before I talk, I just want you to know that this is as much a reminder to me as it is to everybody else. It's not about preaching, but it's the fact that we all forget about our health, because ourselves is the last person that we look after. So to talk about diabetes, what is diabetes? Diabetes is raised blood sugar. So your blood sugar, like everything else in your body, has to be very tightly regulated. And the regulation happens by means of a hormone called insulin. And insulin is produced by the pancreatic gland. And what insulin does is it takes your sugar that we get from the breakdown of food, which we all need, it's essential for life, and it takes that sugar from the bloodstream and it pushes it into cells, where it gets used as a source of energy. So in the bloodstream, at all times, your sugar, whether you've eaten, whether you've not eaten, needs to be within a very narrow range, okay? And if that doesn't happen, that state is called diabetes. And that has lots of complications. So diabetes is actually quite a silent killer, because you're not really going to be symptomatic from your diabetes, but you're going to have a lot of complications that I'll talk about later. So we've all heard about diabetes, and we've all heard of two forms of diabetes. There's type 1 diabetes and there's type 2 diabetes. So type 1 diabetes is a lot less common, and it is where your body isn't actually producing the insulin. So there is no insulin there to regulate blood sugar. And type 2 diabetes is where actually it's producing insulin, and in a lot of cases it's producing more insulin than normal, but the body's cells have become resistant to insulin, so they're not really, insulin isn't able to be effective any longer. This is actually preventable because there are lots of lifestyle factors that lead to type 2 diabetes, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. And type 2 diabetes is by far the most commonest. 90% of the population has type 2 diabetes. So in terms of what are the things that you and I can look out for as to we may have diabetes, which like I said, can be silent quite often. So increased frequency of urination, increased thirst, increased hunger. So actually diabetic patients who become newly diabetic will describe being hungry whilst eating a meal. Wounds that are slow to heal, especially cuts and blisters in the skin that are slow to heal. Also, unintentional weight loss, which happens very rapidly, very suddenly, can often be associated with diabetes. Blurred vision, visual disturbances, again, a sign of diabetes. And you may find that you have tingling and numbness in your hands or feet, and also you're often more likely to be more vulnerable to infections, especially urinary tract infections or skin infections. So those kind of things should alert you to think about being tested for diabetes. So diabetes is very common, and about 3.8 million people in England have diabetes. Majority of this, like I said, is type 2 diabetes, which is preventable, so we really should be able to do something about it. And actually, almost 1 million is silent diabetes. And that figure is projected to rise a lot higher. So by 2035, we think it'd be close to 5 million people who will have diabetes. And it's not just a health burden to the society that diabetes proposes. There's also a huge health economic burden, 3.8 billion pounds spent every year on diabetes, and that's a phenomenal amount of money. So in terms of the risk factors for diabetes, and the reason that I've started with this is because it's most relevant to most people in this room, is ethnicity. So type 2 diabetes is 6 times more common in people of South Asian or descent than it is in white people. So that's actually a very big number, which means that in this room full of us, 1 or 2 people will be diabetic. So this is something very important for us. In terms of the other risk factors for diabetes, there is obesity, so having a BMI of higher than 23. For women who had gestational diabetes, so that's diabetes that you develop purely in your pregnancy, you're much more likely to develop diabetes later on in life. Then actually later on in life, full stop, you're much more likely to develop diabetes. So higher than the age of 40, you're more at risk of developing diabetes. Those who have an impaired glucose tolerance or have been told by their health practitioners that they have pre-diabetes. So again, you're much more at risk of developing full-blown diabetes later. If you have an inactive lifestyle, so a sedentary lifestyle, which is very easy in today's time for most of us, because most of us spend our time in front of a computer, sitting on a chair, lack of exercise. So these are all risk factors of diabetes. Additionally, having hypertension and also abnormal lipid profile means that you're much more likely to have something called metabolic syndrome, which is being overweight, hypertensive, your lipid profile is abnormal, and then you're much more likely to have diabetes and also complications of diabetes. So what are the complications of diabetes? So I've always felt that back in my medical student days as well, that actually diabetes is probably one of the worst diseases to get because it has so many complications, and it affects both your quality of life and your quantity of life. So it has both morbidity and mortality implications. From the simplest things, it can affect your retinas, so it can lead to blindness. You have an increased risk of getting cataracts. You have an increased risk of getting glaucoma. You have what we call renal impairment, which means your kidneys are not working as well as they should be. And in the extreme cases, you could be dialysis dependent or even need a renal transplant. Diabetes also puts you at much higher risk of having a stroke, of having a heart attack, and of getting peripheral vascular disease, which is something that both speakers have mentioned already, whereby your arteries get clogged and the ability of blood to flow through these pipes gets limited, and you start experiencing symptoms of pain. It might be angina if it's to your heart, or it might be what we call claudication if it's to your legs. You also get nerve damage, so you get tingling, you get numbness. Diabetic patients can't feel their feet. As a result, they get ulcers because they damage their feet and they don't feel they don't feel that damage, and that leads to what we call a diabetic foot, which is ulcerated, which often leads to infection, which often leads to the infection becoming systemic, going to the bones. So this is a disease which has huge implications on people's lifestyles. And I think, that's about it in terms of what diabetes does. So how do we avoid getting diabetes? What can we do in our daily lives? Well, first and foremost is the one thing that we all find difficult, which is exercise. So we do need to make time for exercise because exercise helps us manage weight, it helps us manage stress, and that then obviously reduces your risk of diabetes, which then reduces your risk of heart disease and stroke and peripheral vascular disease. So it all starts with weight management. It starts with looking at what you eat, and I'm going to talk about that in a bit more detail. It also actually starts with rest, because if you if you rest adequately and you sleep adequately, your body is not stressed, and that actually helps manage things like blood pressure, it manages things like appetite, manages things like your ability to exercise, and therefore your risk of diabetes. So actually, exercise and rest in equal measure are important to manage your lifestyle. And what can we eat to make diabetes, to make our risk of diabetes lower? So actually, it's plant-based proteins as opposed to meat and processed meat. It's having whole grain as opposed to baked goods. It's having fiber as opposed to refined sugar. So those are the kind of things that we need to be making. So going for brown bread instead of white bread, going for tofu and soya instead of processed meats, and again going for low sugar or no sugar options. So that's the way that we can all manage our risk of getting diabetes. Thank you.
Sairam, good morning. My name's Priya and I'm a nutrition coach. So I'm going to just touch base on what your body actually needs in terms of nutrition. Okay. Right, okay. So as you can see from the slide, our body actually needs 40% carbohydrates, and 25% of that should actually come from fiber intake. We also need 30% protein and 30% good fats. If we move on. So the function of carbs or carbohydrates and why we actually need it. Carbohydrates are essential to our nutrition because it is what our body uses as a source of energy, as Pooja mentioned earlier. During digestion, carbs are broken down into simple sugars, which is then absorbed into our bloodstream as blood glucose. The glucose is sent to the body's cells by the hormone insulin, and our cells use this glucose as fuel. So these are the types of carbs in the middle diagram that you should avoid. These are simple carbs that are not actually good for your body and don't fuel your body correctly. But the other sides, on either sides, are complex carbs and fiber. So as Pooja mentioned, whole grains, nuts, legumes, like plant-based foods basically, and obviously your vegetables and your grains as complex carbs. Okay, good fats. So good fats are essential to our body for energy also. It also supports the cell function. Good fats protect our organs and help keep our body warm. Good fats also help our body to absorb some of the nutrition and nutrients that are produced by our hormones, so we can actually make use of those nutrients. Protein, why protein is important or an essential. Protein is an essential component of every cell in the body, including immune cells. It's also important for post-exercise, which is needed to repair your muscles. Ideally, you'd need to consume between 20 to 25 grams of protein for each meal. So that's, no, go back. One more. Gave him the wrong one. It's okay. So if you go back to the plate, that is what your plate should look like for every meal, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And I know that's difficult in this day and age to actually prepare a full, balanced meal for breakfast, for example, when you're trying to sort out kids and do the school run as well. But ideally, you should have a protein, a complex carb, and lots of fruit and vegetables. And the more colourful your plate is, the better. And that's basically it on nutrition.
So that was a very quick whistle-stop tour on 4 very big topics, actually. But I hope that's brought some, some awareness on these quite common health conditions. We've got some blood pressure monitors and some blood sugar monitors as well. So if anybody would like to test their blood sugars and blood pressures and want to write it down and take it to their GP or something, then please feel free to stay around, and do that. Yes, questions? Yeah, any questions? I've got my seniors here to help me out.
Okay, I'll ask the first question.
Yeah.
The meat replacement products like corn and other things, the super stores which you get, is it a processed food or is it not a processed food? Or if it is a processed food, how
Meat replacement products. So meat replacement products, I mean, plant-based products are your best alternative. So as she mentioned, soya, tofu, those are the best type of plant-based products to replace proteins. There's also lentils are very good to replace proteins. There's a lot of vegetables also.
question is about corn and the micro
Ah, okay.
Because it comes as a refrigerator or freezer one.
That is a process. Yeah, it is a process. It's actually soya, and I don't know, it depends on whether you're vegetarian and vegan, because corn actually contains egg in it. So if you are vegan, for example, that wouldn't be your best bet as a meat replacement. But tofu and soya definitely would be your best alternative.
Yeah, and I suppose the other thing is because it is processed in that obviously it has salt, and salt is obviously, like Cindy mentioned, linked to blood pressure. But it's not processed in the same way as processed meat is processed. So the risk factors from that is not the same as processed meat. So sausage, that is a corn sausage, and a sausage that's a meat sausage have different risks. But yes, it's still processed.
Sorry, say that again?
One of the slides you mentioned, there's a central amount of air.
So if you put the carb slide up, it's simple carbs that you want to avoid. So sugars, yeah. So it's basically sugars, crisps, cakes, processed. That
Even fruits and all fruits.
it depends what kind of diet. So for somebody who's diabetic, they do need to watch how much fruit, because although fruit is good for you, it's still the natural sugars in fruits can still affect somebody who's diabetic. So you do need to, especially, for example, grapes, which is very high in sugar. There are certain fruits that are more high in sugar than others. So that's important to watch if you are diabetic. But otherwise, within moderation, it is okay.
So you said HDL. Is it HDL, which is a good
Yes.
cholesterol?
Yeah.
What kind of foods are they?
These are all for our nutritionists. I'll just sit back down.
You know this because you live with me. Why are you asking?
That's a public interest question.
Any foods high in fat are going to be bad for cholesterol. So you want to avoid that, especially saturated fats. You want polysaturated, not saturated fats. So the oils that you cook with, for example, are important. And if you can cook with less oil, especially our culture, we tend to cook with a lot of oil, a lot of ghee. Reducing that would definitely help with cholesterol.
So we're going to have, we'll just, if you give us maybe 5 minutes, we'll set up four stations, 4